Second example. There's not a lot of difference in this section, but sometimes you might be asked, and I think I used this phrase before, you might be asked, like, what score represents the top 5th percentile, maybe. So instead of them saying, like, the 95th percentile, they'll use that language, top percentile. And the only thing you have to know about that is it's kind of logical, but you have to think, if you want the top 5th percentile, then really what you do is subtract that percent from 100 to figure out what the actual percentile ranking is. So the top 5% is really the 95th percentile. So when you're doing these problems, you're going to have to use 95 as your number. So now to complete the problem, we'll use the same example as before. SAT mean score 960 and standard deviation is 175. We're going to use that same data from before. But now let's find what score represents the top 5th percentile, which we just talked about is really the 95th percentile. Okay, so remember, the first step, you have to change your percent to a decimal. So that means 95. And then remember, if you have a percent, you have one of those 4-digit chart numbers. So make it look like a 4-digit chart number. So I'm looking for the number 9500. Let's pull up the chart. It takes just a second to get it formatted so that you can see it. I'm kind of preparing it here. Okay, you should be able to see it now. Let me pull it up. So we're looking for 9500. And we're probably not going to find 9500, but we find the closest thing to it. Now this one is unique. It happens a couple times. One time is at 95 percentile, and one time is at 5 percentile. But notice our problem. We have 9495. That's 5 numbers away from 9500. And we have 9505. That's 5 numbers away also. So neither one of these is closest. They're both the same distance. So this is a special one. It's kind of weird. It's the only time you have to do this. But what you have to do is you have to take the z-score in between these two. So first let's figure out what are the two z-scores we're talking about here. So we're talking about, we have to look at what row we're in. We're in the 1.6 row. And then we have 2 columns here. Each one has a different one. Let me grab and scoot this over so I have a little bit of space to write. Okay. All right. So one of those numbers is in the 04 column, and one of them is in the 05 column. So my 2 z-scores I'm working with here, I'm going to scoot it over a little bit more. All right. So I have the z-score 1.64. That's one of them. Okay, that's the small one. And then 1.65. Those are the 2 z-scores. Remember, you're in the 1.6 row for both of those. One of them is in the 4 column. One was in the 5 column. Let me scoot it down so we can see this there. Okay. Again, because these are both equal, they're both 5 numbers away. Neither one is closest. You have to pick the number in between it. So find the number between 6. Add a 0 to the end. Oh my gosh, that is ugly. Let's write it over. 1.64. If you add a 0 to the end of both of those, just like add another decimal place, then it's really easy to tell the number between 640 and 650 is 645. So this is one of the few times that you are going to have a z-score that actually has 3 decimal places. And again, the only reason you're doing that is because those 2 that I have circled, your number 9500 is smack dab in between them. And so we can't choose either one because they're the same distance. So that's our z-score. Let's go back to the other page and finish our problem. Now that we have the z-score, let's scoot everybody up. And we'll scoot this work up. So now we'll do our x formula problem. So x equals z-score, which we just figured out was 1.645. The formula for x is, I'm going to write up here, x equals z-score times standard deviation. You should have this in your notes if you watched the first example, plus the mean. So there's my z-score. I'm going to multiply that times my standard deviation, plus your mean. You're doing that in your calculator. 1.645 times 175 plus 960. And you get 1247.875. Again, this is a test score, so we're going to round to the nearest Poll number 1248. So an SAT math and verbal combined score of 1248 represents the top 5th percentile.